At the moment, it is Donald Trump versus Harvard University. President Donald Trump and the DOJ have officially asked the IRS to revoke Harvard University's tax-exempt status. Now, yesterday, Trump posted on Truth Social, perhaps Harvard should lose its tax-exempt status and be taxed as a political entity if it keeps pushing political, ideological and terrorist-inspired support sickness. Now, this, of course, also comes after Trump's administration pulled more than $2 billion in funding from the Ivy League school after it refused to comply with a set of terms set by the Department of Education and others. But what do you make of this, Adam? Is this fair enough? Is Harvard learning this lesson? If you go woke, you go broke?
Well, personally, I find it extraordinary that the US government gives these billions of dollars to these Ivy League universities in the first place. The US has a $2 trillion deficit every single year, and these institutions do not need the money at all. I mean, Harvard, for instance, its endowment is something like $55 billion. And so just from the interest alone on that, it probably earns about $5 billion a year. And then, of course, all the fees that it gets every year from students. So it doesn't need the money. So I think if they pull the funding, I think that's perfectly reasonable. I mean, of course, one of the ironies is that if it does not receive federal funding, then Harvard doesn't have to comply with various US anti-discrimination laws. So that's one little wrinkle there. But certainly, it's true that lots of these universities have become hotbeds of woke ideology. It's the same in Australia too. We've seen all the reporting from the Australian about the crazy, welcome to countries and so forth that students have to do. So I think universities should be concerned worldwide that if they keep behaving like this, they may lose some public funding.
Absolutely, putting them on notice. Now, Adam, you've written a piece in the IPA Review about returning to Australia after a long stint in the United States and how we need some Trump-style shock therapy right here. I have to agree with you, but can you tell us more about this?
Yeah, well, look, I started that piece just by being so shocked basically at how woke Australia had become. When I landed at Sydney Airport, the first sign I saw was "Welcome to Gamay," and I thought to myself, "What on earth is Gamay?" I realised it's the Aboriginal word for the local area. And then I turned on the ABC News a bit later, and it was it had some Aboriginal name for the news. So I was just like, this would never happen in the US ever. I mean, even Democrats would not behave like that in the US. You'd never see President Biden, for instance, standing in front of 3 flags, whereas that happens with our politicians here all the time. So I just really noticed a big cultural difference. And then of course, on the policy front, well, look, we're in this federal election campaign. It's pretty depressing stuff.
Oh, isn't it?
People might not like Donald Trump, but at least he's doing things. I mean, I think he's issued 124 executive orders since he was sworn in, which is a record, whereas our politicians here, when they act, they tend to do damaging things if they act at all.
Yeah, I agree. Even if you like Trump or not, he's leading and he's not trying to pander to some group to try and get votes. You know exactly where he stands for. I think a lot of the criticism that I keep hearing about this election campaign here in Australia is we need someone like a Donald Trump to actually stand up. Do you think that would work here in Australia, or are we all too woke that it wouldn't work here?
Well, look, I think the compulsory voting system here makes it very hard, unfortunately, for us to get a Trump, because the incentive for politicians and the incentive for both major political parties is to pander to the person in the middle who pays no attention and doesn't care.
Yeah.
And so that's why you get the sort of politics we have. Whereas in the US, you can get these dynamic, strong, and of course controversial leaders like Donald Trump, and they can win and they can make changes. I think we need changes, but sadly, I don't think we're going to get the big bang changes we need until there's a serious recession here, and that's somewhat depressing.
Isn't it? Well, looking at Donald Trump's popularity, his chaotic tariff rollout hasn't dented his popularity one bit. A new Daily Mail and JL Partners poll has shown that his approval rating is now sitting at 54%, matching his all-time high. Are you surprised by this, Adam, or not at all?
Yeah, look, slightly surprised. I mean, that's just as we said earlier. There's been this hysterical media reaction for weeks. It doesn't seem to have affected him, but then again, it hasn't affected him for 8 years to some extent. The media, he's always attacked, and he got more popular. So, but look, he's doing what he said he was going to do. I mean, he announced these tariffs all throughout the election campaign, which I covered in the US. He said it all the time at every speech, and now he's doing it. So certainly amongst his supporters, they'd be happy about it. And look, 60% of the US population don't own any shares, basically. So they couldn't give 2 hoots about the stock market, which has been on the front page every single day for a week, basically, for weeks. So for them, that's not a negative. They just want jobs to come back to the US, good manufacturing jobs. Whether that happens or not, we don't know. Let's just wait and see. But I can understand why his supporters are happy with him.
Look, finally, I want to ask you about Ukraine. A United States Special Envoy to the Middle East, Steve Witkoff, says that he's optimistic about negotiating a peace deal between Russia and Ukraine following his meeting with Russian President Vladimir Putin last Friday. However, it does appear that negotiations have stalled, or they're not moving as quickly as the Trump administration would have hoped for. You know, Steve Witkoff says that he's optimistic. Should we be sceptical about this?
Well, look, I think it'll probably end in coming months. You know, certainly not the 24 hours that Donald Trump first said. I mean, the Trump administration has been putting a lot of pressure both on Russia and Ukraine to reach a deal. I think that will have some effect. And actually, from Australia's point of view, this war is getting real. We've got these reports of a possible Russian base just to the north in Indonesia, and from Russia's point of view, that's part of its geopolitical strategy, and might have something to do with its relations with the US. So I think we have to hope that the war ends soon, and we should be happy that Donald Trump is trying to end it.
Absolutely. Adam Creighton, Chief Economist at the IPA, thank you so much for joining us on Power Hour. Great to speak with you.
Likewise, thanks a lot.